Caitlin, could you tell us a little bit about your eye, the hit, if it affected you, how it affected you, and through the rest of the game?
Circling back on the play with your eye, what would you say to the crowd of people that think a hit like that was intentional? Maybe even
It wasn't intentional by any means. You just watched the play. It wasn't intentional.
20 fouls called on the Sun, only 11 on the Fever. But get this, the Fever were playing way more physical. Something's not adding up here. We're about to dive into one of the craziest WNBA games this season, where the refs might have stolen the show for all the wrong reasons. All right, let's talk about that wild Fever versus Sun game. You know, the one where everyone's saying the refs might have messed things up big time. Caitlin Clark and the Fever were ready to ball out, but from the start, something felt off.
We struggled to get stops at times, but also like the clock getting messed up. It was just one thing after the next, but yeah, overall, like it didn't bother me.
Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Imagine this. The Fever are playing rough, getting in the Sun's faces, but somehow they're not the ones racking up fouls. It's like the refs were watching a different game. And you know what's even crazier? We're about to break down why people are saying this game might have been rigged. Trust me, you're gonna wanna hear this. The calls were so bad, even neutral fans were scratching their heads. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the arena, those phantom fouls. Ever seen a game where one team gets called for everything while the other team gets away with murder? That's exactly what went down here.
When you went and kind of swatted at Caitlin, did you intend to hit her in the eye?
I don't even know why I would intend to hit anybody in the eye. That doesn't even make sense to me. But no, I didn't. I didn't know I hit her, actually. I was trying to make a play on the ball, and I guess I followed through and I hit her, so obviously it's never intentional.
And wait till you hear about Clark's free throw count. The refs were calling everything on the Sun, but somehow missing obvious fouls on the Fever. It was like watching two different games at once. Fans were getting more and more frustrated as the questionable calls kept piling up. You could feel the tension in the arena rising with each blown whistle. But here's where it gets really wild. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation, only shot 2 free throws the entire game. 2. For a player who's usually living at the line, that's absolutely unheard of. It's like the refs forgot she was on the court or something. And it wasn't just fans being salty about their team losing. Even neutral observers were calling out the refs for their poor performance. When you've got people with no stake in the game saying something's fishy, you know it's bad. You know what's even crazier? There was a ref standing 5 feet away from Caitlin Clark when she got fouled hard. Guess what happened next? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. How is that even possible in a pro game? It's like the ref was daydreaming about what they were gonna have for dinner instead of watching the game. The foul count tells the whole story. The Sun racked up 20 fouls while the Fever only got hit with 11. Now, if you were watching the game, you'd swear it was the other way around.
play with your eye, what would you say to the crowd of people that think a hit like that was intentional? Maybe even
That's great, and you have an opportunity to come back the next game and, you know, try to play a little bit better and give yourself a chance to take it back home and win.
last one. Quickly circling back on
The Fever were playing way more physical, getting in the Sun's faces, but somehow they kept coming out clean. It's not just about the numbers, though. It's about the impact on the game. When refs are inconsistent like this, it changes how players have to approach the game. Do you play aggressive and hope you get away with it? Or do you play it safe and risk getting called for phantom fouls anyway? It's a mess. And let's not forget about player safety. When refs aren't calling obvious fouls, it can lead to dangerous situations. Players might start taking matters into their own hands if they feel like they're not being protected. That's the last thing anyone wants to see in a professional league. The frustration was written all over the players' faces. You could see Clark getting more and more annoyed as the game went on. And can you blame her? When you're getting knocked around with no calls, it's hard to keep your cool. But here's the thing. Great players find a way to adapt. And that's exactly what Clark did. Even with the refs seemingly working against her, she still managed to make an impact on the game. That's the mark of a true pro. Still, it's a shame that we're talking about the refs instead of the amazing plays on the court. The WNBA is full of incredible talent, and games like this take the spotlight away from where it should be, on the players and their skills. You think those calls were bad? Hold on to your seats. There's one play that takes the cake. A moment so wild it had everyone questioning if the refs even knew the rules. And guess who was at the center of it all? Yep, Caitlin Clark. Picture this. Clark's in the air, going for a shot. Suddenly, Danana Bonner comes flying in, totally out of control. There's contact, and Clark hits the ground hard. Everyone in the arena held their breath. It looked bad. Real bad. Now, in any normal game, that's a flagrant foul. No question. It's dangerous, it's reckless, and it's exactly the kind of play that these rules are designed to prevent. But guess what? The whistle stayed silent. The ref, standing just a few feet away, didn't make a call. Let's break this down for a second. A flagrant foul isn't just about punishing a player. It's about protecting them. When a play gets that dangerous, the refs are supposed to step in and say, hey, that's not okay. It sends a message to everyone on the court. Safety first. But in this game, nothing. Nada. Zilch. It's like the ref was more interested in his shoelaces than the game-changing play right in front of him. And you know what's even crazier? The commentator even called it out, saying, that's 3 points. 3 points that could have changed the whole game. This wasn't just a bad call. It was a perfect example of everything that went wrong in this game. The inconsistency, the missed calls, the potential impact on player safety. It was all there in that one play. And here's the kicker. It wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the game, Clark was getting knocked around with barely a whistle. For a player who usually lives at the free throw line, she only shot 2 free throws the entire game. 2. That's like telling LeBron he can only dunk once a game. It just doesn't make sense. But you know what? Even with all this going on, Clark kept her cool. She didn't let the lack of calls throw her off her game. She adapted, she pushed through, and she still made an impact. That's the mark of a true pro right there. Still, you can't help but wonder, what if? What if that flagrant foul had been called? What if Clark had gotten those 3 points? In a close game like this, every point matters. Every call can be the difference between a win and a loss. And it's not just about this one game. It's about the bigger picture. When refs miss calls this big, it shakes people's faith in the whole system. Fans start to wonder, is this how it's always going to be? Are the stars of the league going to have to fight through this kind of treatment every night? It's a shame, really. The WNBA is packed with incredible talent. Players like Clark are pushing the game to new heights every single night. But when we're sitting here talking about the refs instead of the amazing plays, something's gone wrong. So here's the real kicker. Some people think this wasn't just incompetence. They're saying the game was rigged against Caitlin Clark. But could the WNBA really be that foolish? It's a claim that's setting the basketball world on fire, and we need to break it down. Let's look at both sides of this crazy situation. On one hand, you've got fans who are convinced this was all planned. They're pointing to the insane foul difference, the missed calls on Clark, and that wild, non-flagrant foul we talked about earlier. It's like the refs had it out for the Fever from the start. But here's the thing. Rigging a game against Caitlin Clark, that's like trying to dim the sun. She's the hottest thing in basketball right now, bringing in fans and attention like nobody's business. Why would the WNBA want to mess with that? On the other side, you've got people saying this was just a case of really, really bad officiating. And let's be real, we've all seen games where the refs seem to forget the rulebook at home. It happens in every sport, at every level. But when it happens in a pro game, with one of the biggest stars on the court, that's when people start asking questions. Now, let's talk about what this means for the WNBA. If the game was rigged, and that's a big if, we're looking at a scandal that could rock the league to its core. Fan trust would be out the window. Sponsors might start backing out. It would be a nightmare. But even if it wasn't rigged, just plain old bad officiating, that's still a huge problem. Fans want to see fair games. They want to see the best players shine. When refs are making calls like they did in this game, it takes away from everything that makes basketball great. Some fans were pointing fingers at Marina Ma from The Sun, saying she was getting away with murder out there. But was it favoritism or just more bad calls? It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely added fuel to the fire. One fan summed it up pretty well, saying, I don't think the WNBA are dumb enough to rig a game against Caitlin, but you just never know. Some of the stuff was absolutely mad. And that's the thing. When officiating is this bad, it makes people question everything. So what's the verdict? Was this game rigged or just really badly officiated? Well, here's what we think. It's probably not rigged. The WNBA has way too much to lose by pulling something like that, especially with a star like Clark involved. But here's the scary part. The effect is almost the same either way. Whether it was intentional or just incompetence, fans are losing faith in the fairness of the game. Players are getting frustrated. And the league has a big problem on its hands. Think about it. If you're a fan watching at home and you see call after call go against your team for no good reason, what are you going to think? You're going to start wondering if something fishy is going on, even if it's just refs having a really off night. And for the players, imagine trying to play your best game when you have no idea what's going to be called a foul and what isn't. It's like trying to hit a moving target while blindfolded. It takes away from the pure competition that makes sports so great. All right, so what's next for the WNBA after this mess? We've seen missed calls, phantom fouls, and fans ready to riot. Something's got to change, right? Here's the deal. The league needs to step up their ref game. Better training, more accountability, maybe even some fancy tech to help out. Imagine instant replay for every close call. That could be a game changer. But it's not just about the refs. The league needs to listen to the players and fans. They're the ones who make the WNBA what it is. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing, to see the best players in the world compete fairly. Let's hope the league is listening and ready to make some changes. The ball's in their court now. What do you think they should do?